Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
The Bears.
Because of the way they play the nickel corner here, and the nickel corner plays 88, 85% of the snaps. He's got to be like part linebacker.
The Bears.
When you're in a scouting room, there's going to be differences of opinion.
The Bears.
Once coaches get involved, of course, they've got their own opinions about what fits best for what they want to do, and that could be drastically different than what the scouts say.
Well, you're looking at traits. And number one, he tested very, very well.
The Bears.
One thing good about Kevin, he's been with 2 other organizations, as well as being the commissioner of the Big Ten. He's been around.
The Bears.
With Greg Olson, Jerry didn't want to get rid of him. I didn't want to get rid of him. Nobody wanted to get rid of him. One guy wanted to get rid of him, Mike March, because Mike March didn't know what the hell to do with him. We tried to talk Lovey out of hiring Mike March for a month and a half. He's playing zone, but number one, he doesn't get enough depth with the drop. But who the hell's going? How many times does a 305, 310-pound defensive tackle drop into coverage, especially in a key situation?
The Bears.
Greg, why are teams wrong on quarterback evaluations so often?
Number one, it's a hard position to evaluate. There's probably not as many real good quarterback evaluators as there needs to be.
The Bears. The Bears. The Bears.
Welcome, everyone, to a fresh edition of Gabriel Talks Football, GTF. My name is Aldo Gandia. Couple of quick housekeeping things. Remember to do that subscribe button, the thumbs up button, the bell button, all that stuff. You'll get alerted whenever we are live with the Barroom Network program. And this week and next week and probably the week after the draft, we're going to be loaded with programming. Greg and I were just talking about our schedule for that draft weekend. And so let me bring him in now. Greg, Gabriel, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Really, really, really good. You and I were talking about doing a draft program every morning after the draft. So Saturday morning, we talk about day 2 picks. And
Friday morning, you mean? Friday morning, day 1 picks, Saturday morning, day 2 picks, and talk about day 3.
That's why he's the star of the show.
Monday, we've got Dan Pompey.
Ooh, Dan Pompey. Everybody, and of course, everyone in the chat is excited about our upcoming guest. He should be with us in about 25 minutes. Dane Brugler of The Athletic. He has just released his Beast. I know you've been thumbing through it, Greg, so to speak. What do you think?
It's a beast. No, it's good. And I'll wait for Dane to come on because he does a superb job every year.
Yes,
and outdoes himself every year.
Yeah.
Just by far the best draft guide out there. I mean, there isn't even a close second.
Right.
Who the hell's my dog barking at?
He's probably looking at a Packers fan.
I don't know. Matt, come in here.
There are a lot of good draft guys. I mean, we had Lance Zierlein, and his is just incredible because he gets it out early. He's working, but the most comprehensive, the most detailed one is definitely Dane Brugler's. And I was reading up on Ashton Genty. Greg, did you know his military background? His father was a commander with the military. He lived in Europe for a while, played football over in Europe and so forth. I mean, the makeup of Ashton Genty after I read that, and then knowing how good of a football player he is, made me think twice. Maybe if this guy is available at 10, maybe he's worthy of picking just because of the entire makeup, person, athlete, gentleman.
Well, I think if he's available at 10, it's a foregone conclusion because of, and Dane's a little bit different than the consensus that we've talked about, the 6 Blues players. His 6 he's got is number 8. So, I mean, otherwise it's the same. Amazing. Everybody pretty much thinks the top players are the same. So, I mean, it's like it's a no-brainer. You got to make that pick. I just don't see there's anywhere he's going to be there. So, well, if the Raiders don't take him, he's going to be there. Well, yeah, but what's stopping another team from going up to get him?
Mm-hmm. Yep. How about that? Hey, Chris has a question. Did you ever feel competitive against another team's top scout or director of scouting?
No. And in fact, people ask me not that question, but do you worry about what other teams take and stuff? And I go, no. I can't control it. So it was like, well, do you try to, say this team's going to take this guy and this team's going to take this guy? And I go, no, I never did that. It was like, look, I just want to know one thing. Who's going to be there when we pick?
Yeah.
And go from there. And so if Green Bay takes a player who's really a good player that we really like, nothing we can do about it. I mean, that's the luck of the draw.
Indeed.
So why worry about it? Don't worry about anything you can't control. Absolutely.
J2K reminds us that Hampton is over at Hallis Hall today for a top 30 visit. So that's interesting news. What is your take?
Ask J2 where he got that. I have not. I think I saw it on Friday that he might be coming in today.
Okay. Yeah, J2K, if you can give us your source on that, that'd be great. What do you make of these top 30 visits? I hear a lot of podcasters putting too much emphasis on it, in my opinion, and maybe some not putting enough. What are your general overall thoughts on that top 30 visit?
I used to use 10, 12, 13 of them on guys that weren't necessarily combine guys that we really liked and thought we might be able to draft on day 3, day 2 then, because it was Saturday and Sunday. But we had to bring him in to get a physical because you're never going to draft a guy you don't have a medical on. So we'd bring him in, but also the guys that were a little lower graded, those would be preferred free agents for us, and so you'd bring them in to really recruit them and sell them on the program. And you tell them, hey, look, we're not going to draft you. Even the kids we thought about drafting and kids that we actually did draft, when we brought them in, we said, we're not drafting you. Just let's get this out on the table right away. We really like you, but we don't see how it's going to fit that we're going to be able to select you. And number one, you tell them that because if you are going to draft him, you don't want him telling his agent and his agent telling somebody else. But it's just, to see his reaction when you say that and then sell him, hey, we really want you. And this is what's good for why this is a good fit for you. And we'd have the position coach talk to him, the coordinator talk to him. So, we had a tag team match going on these kids. So we did that. And then there's guys we brought in just to throw off people. And the biggest name we did that was Kyle Bowler, the quarterback, the year we took Rex. As I've said many times, told the story, we outright rejected Kyle Bowler at the combine interview just because of a couple things he said. But we brought him in and we even let him, do a little press conference to build it up. So it gets to draft day, and what happens? Baltimore jumps in front of us to take him. Sometimes your stupid plans work. I mean,
yeah, interesting. All right, so J2K says that Ben Devine dropped the news, and Hampton posted a picture on his Instagram, and I'm assuming that's a picture that kind of confirms that he is coming to Chicago for a visit today. So that's
or he's already here.
Correct. AW has a great question here because I read in Brugler's Beast that Genty under weaknesses, he put down the amount of hits Genty has taken in college, and AW is asking you, are you concerned with the number of hits Genty took in college?
Well, I mean, with running backs, yeah, you're always concerned. There's only so many hits your body can take. And then your body starts to break down and you're going to, your legs start to go or whatever. That's one of the main reasons why there's a lot of people, including myself, that don't believe in using a first-round pick on a running back anymore. Now, it used to be they were the premium position, but like when we took but that was 20 years ago.
Mhm.
And, the game has changed and the philosophy has changed. I mean, we were in New York, I think three times when I was in New York, we took a running back with the first pick. But at the time, that was one of the most premium positions on the field and a key position. Now it's no longer. Part of it is just the way the salary cap works and the fact that running backs break down early. For the most part, most of them don't get to a second contract. The ones that do get to a second contract rarely make it through the second contract.
Mhm.
Perfect example would be McCaffrey. He got the huge second contract. He hasn't played.
Mhm.
He's been hurt most of that, and it's like, I had forgotten about that. And I thought about it. And he's like the poster child of why you don't want to do that. So it's like, why do I use my top pick on a player that I'm going to have for 4 years, maybe 5 years, and then, I got to replace him. I'm a firm believer you got to draft a running back every other year at some point in the draft because of the short shelf life of them. But still, if you get a guy special, if you deem Genty special, and the consensus in the league is that he's a special player, and he's sitting there when you're picking, you got to take him.
Right.
Okay. So is it you're going to get 5 years out of him, 6 years, 7 years? Who knows?
Right.
Right. We don't have the answer. You get freaks like the big running back from Alabama that with the Ravens now was with Tennessee. I mean, he was, he's going on 10 years now. But he's got the body to withstand that. Emmitt Smith played a long time. Emmitt Smith was really about the same size as Genty, maybe not quite as bulky as Genty, but he couldn't run like Genty speed-wise. Emmitt Smith was a 4.7 guy.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, a lot of people in the chat, and I'm of a similar opinion. I believe that the running game in the NFL is evolving, not back to what it was, but becoming a bigger part of offenses now. And we saw it with Detroit under Ben Johnson's when he's offensive coordinator there. There's just more of a reliance on the run game because of all these shell defenses. And so you've got an opportunity to get to the line of scrimmage virtually untouched if you've got a good offensive line. You can pick up yardage. And Ben Johnson has seen that and it took advantage of it. So I think if you draft a guy like Genty, and even if you have him for just that first contract, because one of the problems could be that second contract and the running back pricing himself out. Even if you have him for 5 years, it could be very beneficial to an offense.
No, I won't disagree that. But, I mean, the thinking is this. You draft a tackle, you draft a defensive lineman, you draft a corner. Theoretically, you might have them 8-10 years.
Yeah, true.
Okay, so that part of that figures into the value of the position. And so that's why for a while running backs just weren't getting any money. Now they are coming back, and you're seeing more go in the first round in the last few years. More go in the top 10 than have gone in a while. But that it doesn't change the fact that there's a lot of people that say, "But he's only a one contract player. I can't count on him for that second contract."
Does it concern you that we don't have an actual 40 time on Genty?
Well, here's the thing. We'll probably bring it up when Dane comes on.
Okay.
Will Johnson worked out this morning. He hasn't worked out for anybody yet. He's got congenital hamstring problems. He had another injury, missed a good part of the season last year. He didn't run a 40. But you do got a GPA of like 20 and a half, or GPS of about 20 and a half miles an hour, which means he can run pretty fast, but you don't have that burst. You don't have that 10-yard time, that 20-yard time. You just got that top speed time. My personal opinion is, and I may be totally wrong, that because he only did a little, he talked himself, he moved himself out of being a top 10 pick. But that's my opinion. He still may go in the top 10, but I just, because he is a good football player. But between durability issues, missing a lot of this last season, not being able to work out until today, that's telling. And with him, it's a hamstring, and hamstrings with a guy that's got to run, to me, that's an issue. Now, Walker's working out on Friday, I believe, but he had like a shoulder issue or something. And so that's a different story. That hamstring issues for a guy that has to run. That's like you got a sprinter in the Olympics. He can't sprint in the Olympics if his hamstrings are bothering him.
Absolutely. Makes total sense. All right. People want to know your thoughts on the Kyler Gordon signing. Adam Schefter reported that the Bears reached an agreement yesterday on a 3-year, $40 million extension that includes $31.25 million guaranteed. And that makes Gordon the NFL's highest paid slot corner and contractually ties him to the Bears through the 2028 season. What are your thoughts?
I think Kyler Gordon's buying dinner for the DB room this week.
I love it. And it's not Taco Bell.
It's good they got it done. Well-deserved, good player. As we talked off the air, I mean, there was just a slot corner, I think Petrie with Houston, got a deal like Thursday or Friday. And that was the highest. Didn't last very long.
Yeah. They were probably waiting on that, right? Just to.
Well, the agents, they always want to have the best contract, but the best contract just lasts until the next contract.
That's right. That's right. He will not be the highest paid slot corner at sometime next season. That is for sure. It may be earlier than that. Okay.
Well,
so
you know what? That one I could argue a little bit. How many great slot corners are there?
That's a good point. Yeah. And one of the things we start this show with our canned open, and you talk about the value of having a physical slot player like Kyler Gordon. Can you repeat that just so that people are aware?
Well, it's just the way, very seldom do people play with a Sam linebacker anymore.
Yeah.
So you got a Mike and a Will. And 85% of the downs, on average, you're playing with 2 linebackers and 5 DBs. So that slot guy, your 5th DB, has to be part linebacker. Because there's going to be rundowns when he's in there, and he's got to take on blocks. He's got to force the run. Doesn't mean he's got to be 220 pounds, but he's got to be tough. And he's got to be durable. And that's what Kyler Gordon is. So not only does he have the quickness, the suddenness to guard these quick inside receivers, but he's got the toughness to play the run and be a good run player. And occasionally, come off the edge on a corner blitz. I guess we should call it a slot blitz because he's a slot. But, there's a lot of things to his game. And the guys that, the Bears have had some guys that are used to be, you put sometimes your smallest corner in on the slot. Well, things change. Figured out, no, I got to have a tough guy in there. And that's exactly what he is. You got to turn on your mic.
That would help. Turn it off when you're coughing and turn it on when you're talking. Okay, I got it. By the way, it was Bear Down Sports, apparently, that went to social media to drop the news of Omarion Hampton, and he did that a little bit before Ben Devine did. Bear Down Sports, by the way, is
the only thing I want to say is this. There's
Sure.
names, and I'm not saying this one's not accurate, because I thought I saw it the other day. But there's names out there, and I'm not going to mention them, that people say are making visits and they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's some erroneous names out there. I know at least 2 in particular that I know for sure they're not making visits. I know that one of those guys is, and I'm not going to mention his name, is having a visit via Zoom call.
Yeah.
But he's not coming in.
And that's not a signal of anything, right? I mean, there are people hired now all the time based on Zoom conversation, not based on Zoom conversations, but having their conversations via Zoom.
Well, the head coach was hired without an in-person interview.
Yeah, he had a pretty good resume for that. So I just wanted to say about the folks over at Bear Down Sports and Bears Country Productions and Thigh and Smy, all of them have YouTube channels. Anyone else have a YouTube channel that wants a shout out, just let me know. Bear Down Sports, by the way, says, Greg, you got me blocked on social media. It's a literal picture from them being in Alice Hall that he's put up there. So he's writing down your thing now. So he's probably going to unblock you, Bear Down Sports.
Well, one guy asked me that too. It took me a week to remember after we got off the show.
Yeah,
and then I did it, and I sent him a little DM. I apologize. So
there you go. All right. So what is the board looking like now as we are 10 days away from the NFL draft? What's it looking like?
I posted the other day. Most cases, teams are going to have their boards done by the end of the week. I don't know how Polls does it. I know how we did it every time. I know how we did it here. I know how we did it in New York. I know how we did it in Philly. And, exactly how Polls does, I don't know. But you're always working with the need positions in the top player first, and then you're working out. So, now you're getting into day 3 guys type thing. And doing the back half of the draft, start talking about scenarios. But this week in particular, you probably want to be done by about noon on Friday because it's a religious holiday weekend. Give those guys the weekend off, and then they got to be back here Monday morning because there's a mini camp starting up Monday. So maybe the scouts don't have to be back in time for the first part of the mini camp, but obviously the front office people do.
Mm-hmm. That brings me to my next question. What transpired with the players last week, and what is going to happen in this next visit of players? Is this just more orientation stuff? They're not
with the mini camp?
Yes.
Mini camp is like a regular mini camp.
So this one next week.
Yeah, you're hands-on. Right now is the first 2 weeks, so you're in phase 1, and they keep changing the rules. But right now it's all conditioning, and the rest is classroom.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, so they're teaching them the offense and the defense in the classroom. Maybe they're going on that indoor turf a little bit and doing some walkthroughs. That part I don't know. Because I don't know exactly what's considered what you can do and what you can't do. Again, they're changing the rules all the time. But you can't go outside or, in the Peyton Center and actually play football until next week. And that is the mini camp Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then Thursday would be just a regular off-season practice, which is, you can't go in a mini camp. You can go offense versus defense. In an off-season practice, it's offense against offense, defense against defense. So you're working by position. And then when you get into OTAs, then it's offense against defense again.
I see. And scouts, when you were director of scouting with the Chicago Bears, these 10 days leading up to the NFL draft, are they checking and rechecking information that they've provided the team? I'll never forget what you told us that you told your scouts is, I don't care how many times you change your mind, just get it right. So tell me a little bit about what's going on with the scouts right now.
Everything's fluid.
Mm-hmm.
You're always going to have information that comes up. Okay, perfect example. There's the wide receiver from Texas. Last week he gets hit with a sexual assault charge, and this guy's a potential high pick.
Right.
So in a way, for his sake, I'm glad, because boy, the more you read about this, I probably shouldn't open my big mouth. but it
Go
just
ahead.
it just doesn't look right.
Yeah.
Put it that way. The more I read about it, because there was a lot of consent involved,
Mhm.
including texts. So that they have. But anyway, the kids at least got 2 weeks to try to get it straightened out,
Mhm.
before the draft. And that might not be enough time, but it may be just enough time.
Mhm.
Because if he doesn't get it settled one way or the other, it could be a situation where he doesn't get drafted, and this guy was going to be a high round pick.
Right. Exactly. Just want to let people in the chat know that Dane should be joining us any minute now. And if you have
He had another
questions,
commitment to do, and I know that, as soon as he got done with that, he was going to be hopping on.
great. And I know a lot of you will have questions. I'll do my best to collect them. And, given the amount of time that we have, we'll try to get some of those in. So keep them coming. They will be coming for Dane Brugler. And, of course, questions for Greg will stay afterwards and entertain those as well.
Yeah, you and I will go another half hour at least.
At least. How'd you meet Dane?
How did what?
How did you meet Dane Brugler? Was just through, social media?
I've never met him in person.
Okay, face to face. Okay.
Talked to him.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing the same stuff.
Yeah.
And I knew some people that knew him, and somebody put us in touch. I got a phone number, and I might have asked him. It was a while ago. I don't remember.
Okay.
But we've talked. I just think the world of him. He's a really good person. But one of the things I want to talk to him about, because I think it's what this draft is all about. And I sent it to you in a text the other day. How everybody, if you say the three main analysts, which are Dane and DJ and Mel, and then you can throw in Lance too. Nobody's got the same group of top players.
Right.
And that's how every single board is around the league.
Yeah.
So, especially this year, the Bears could pick somebody at 10, or say they trade down, whatever it is. Or when they get to 39 and why they pick that guy when they could this guy so much higher. Higher according to who? There's only one board that counts, their board.
That's correct.
Okay. And it's when you look at the differences. Now, there's a guy I love, Nolan, the defensive tackle from Mississippi. Now he, may have some issues. Nothing against no law-breaking issues, but he's probably not an altar boy. But I keep going, but these defensive linemen,
You don't want altar boys.
you judge them by a different standard.
By the way, Greg,
Mel's got him.
Our guest has arrived.
Oh, beautiful.
So let's welcome in now. There he is, Dane Brugler from The Athletic, author of The Beast, which came out late last week. And it is the Bible for all Bears fans. I apologize if I offended anybody by using that religious analogy. Dane, how are you?
I'm good. Hey, it was fun listening to you guys just now. And I think that's, what Greg is saying is so spot on. Like, no one's right or wrong on draft weekend, right? We'll find out down the road who's right and wrong.
Yeah, you find out 3 years from now.
Exactly. And so even last year's draft, we don't know who's right or wrong. Let's give these guys a chance to get on the field, see what they can do. So much gets with fit and scheme. And I think there's so many contributing factors here that it really does make it more fun to talk about than – I think, we need to, people get upset about this pick or that pick. Let's see how it plays out. See, and this year, especially with just every year is a little bit different. Every year there's so many differing opinions from team to team, analyst to analyst. This year, even more so. It's like, there's really no such thing as chalk outside of the top 3 or 4 picks. Then It's just, which, you know what? I know I'm supposed to be the expert and supposed to say, I don't care. Let this be a fun draft. Let's go into day one, Thursday night. And if I get 2 right on my mock draft, so be it. I don't care. That means it was a fun draft, unpredictable draft. And at the end of the day, like, I think that's what everybody wants.
Yeah.
You know, what's funny, Dane, is and I've been saying it for weeks, is that when people go back and look at the mock drafts, it's going to be hilarious just to look at them. And it's just more so this year than any year I can remember. Now, I've been in drafts like this where, there's no consensus, but this one is huge. And, Ryan Poles said at the owners' meetings, he said, well, you got a group of top players and we're still in single digits. Then there's the next, and this is how he said it, 30, 40, 50 players that are all the same. And I mentioned to try to use as an example so people try to understand. I go, you look at your top group, look at DJ's top group, look at Mel's 2-round draft that came out the other day. Arguably, you guys are the 3 best in the business in this. Are they the same? Nope, they're not even close. And if they're not the same, that's how the teams are going to be. They're not going to be the same. So you got to trust that the team is doing what they think is best for their club.
Right. And that's what, so like right now I'm working on my 7-round mock draft, which will come out this week on The Athletic. And it's like some of these players, because what I'll do is I'll put it together and then I'll send it out to a few of my buddies in the league and I'll just, what's your feedback on this? What do you think? And some will tell me, oh, this guy's, we have higher than this, or I don't think he's going to go that high. And you get differing opinions on players. So if one team's telling me, oh, this is, he's not going to go this high, or the other team is telling me, I have him too low, he's going to go higher than this. It's like, okay, well, obviously there's a disconnect and you have to try and find, all right, where's that happy medium of where he's going to go? And that really makes for some interesting, swings on draft night, especially like you said, Thursday night, 1st round. I think we feel okay about who's going to be the first probably 4 or 5 picks. But then I'm here for the madness, and like the Bears are in an interesting spot at 10 where they have a good idea of probably 6 or 7, maybe 8 players who will be off the board for them. But then, okay, who's going to be left for them and which direction do they go? Could it be an offensive lineman? Could it be a defensive lineman? I don't think Genty makes it to 10. What if Tyler Warren is there at 10? So that's what
I don't think. From what I understand, he doesn't make it to 10. But
if he gets past the Jets, he has a chance. But the Jets, that you could argue, the biggest tight end, right? And so, yeah, absolutely. And so that's what I think. It's funny. Mock drafts get a bad rap. What do we think NFL teams are doing right now? They're doing mock drafts. They're doing these projections, these exercises to try and, give scenarios. And so scenario A, this is the player that we would take. Scenario B, okay, well, this player fell to us. And so they go through all these exercises. So on draft night, they're in a good spot where they feel like, okay, we don't have to think about it because we already know, we've already talked about it. This is the best player available on our board. That's who we're going to go get.
I'll tell you a story. I've never told you this before. I've mentioned it on here, but it taught me a big lesson. I forgot the exact year. It might have been 94, something like that. And there was Dan Reeves was our head coach in New York. And we had the 5th pick. And so we're going through we're setting our board, but there was a player that the scouting department, and now I can't remember his name. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Defensive end, got drafted from Illinois, got drafted by Arizona, ended up at Tampa and had a great career.
Simeon Rice?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So the scouting department had Simeon as the number 2 player. Dan Reeves, God rest his soul, hated Simeon Rice. Now, I'm not lying to you when I say we fought about Simeon Rice for literally a day and a half in our meetings. Like all day one day and half the next day. Finally, we said, that's it. But if he was there, we were going to take him. The problem is that, the first 4, and there was a consensus top 4. There was Keyshawn Johnson. There was Hardy, the other linebacker from Illinois, Simeon Rice, and Jonathan Ogden. Now you're happy with any of them. We picked 5. So we thought And part of it was, and I'm not saying anything that hasn't been out in public, Baltimore was in there, and everybody thought Baltimore and Art Modell had actually told Wellington Mara that was going to be their guy, was going to take that crazy running back from Nebraska. And
Lawrence Phillips.
Yes. And so, and he said, that's going to be our guy. And so we thought that, so we're going to get one of these four. And as it turned out, then the day before the draft, Ozzie, and it was Ozzie's first draft. He goes in to see Modell and he says, there's no way we can take this guy, and there's all these problems with him, yada, yada, yada. So Modell gives in and goes to what Ozzie wants, which is take a Hall of Fame tackle in Jonathan Ogden.
Worked out okay. Yeah.
Worked out great for the first four. We didn't have a guy at 5 because we weren't prepared. Now I was just a scout then, and it's like it got into panic mode in the room, and you're on the clock, and it just taught me so much that you got to be prepared. That was the worst case scenario. So you got to be prepared, and you got to do that in your preparation this week, last week, that what if that happens? What are you going to do?
Who did you end up drafting?
His name was Jackson. He was a defensive end from Oklahoma.
Okay.
And he was,
Yeah.
It was a guy that Reeves liked, but reality is we didn't do enough work on the next 4 or 5. And that was George Young's draft. That was George's fault. Tom Boyster, the director of scouting, because they're the guy who was running the draft at that time. But it just, I remember when I came to Chicago then in 2001, and Jerry and I are talking, I go, Jerry, we can never let that happen to us. We got to just keep, know what we're going to be looking at. And if we get hit with a bad case, we got to know what we're going to do. And we got to know what we're going to do a couple of days before, not when we're on the clock.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that draft. Yeah, there's some good players. Willie Anderson went top 10 that year. Marvin Harrison was in that draft. Ray Lewis was in that draft. Yeah, so there were some good players that went in that first round.
What was the guy's name? John Jackson or something that we took at 5?
Cedric Jones.
Cedric Jones. I was close. Jay.
Yeah. And then Lawrence Phillips went 6 to the Rams. So yeah, what a crazy draft.
Yep.
Wow.
And Simeon, to finish the story, Dan Reeves, couldn't stand Simeon Rice. He said he's just going to be a guy, yada, yada. So we got to play Arizona during the season. Pete Markarian was the offensive line coach for us, and he goes in to see him and says, Dan, we got to keep a tight end or a back end and to block this guy. He's going to kill the quarterback. And Reeves just rips him a new a-hole. Says, he sucked there in the draft. He sucks now. You figure out how to block him with one guy. True story, before the end of the first quarter, Simeon Rice knocked the quarterback out of the game.
Oh, gosh. Jeez. Well, Reeves probably didn't have much to say after that. That's tough.
No, I think he was gone the next year. And it was just, that was the year she was there were the worst time I ever had scouting for the draft. It was
at least you didn't pass on him. At least he was off the board. So, it would have been a lot worse if he was on the board at 5 and you went in a different direction. So at least there's that.
Well, we wouldn't have passed because then George had final say and George would have taken him.
Let me start with some questions that we're getting in for the chat because we're getting tons of them. Samo says, is there a player or two that hasn't been getting talked about much that you think people should be paying more attention to?
I mean, there's always those guys, right? I mean, it's hard to keep track of who's talking about who and who, all that. But like Derek Harmon, the defensive lineman from Oregon, I think doesn't get enough love. I mean, this guy, he led all FBS interior defensive linemen in pressures last year. Like at the end of the day, give me the guys that hate to be blocked, and that's Derek Harmon. So and he at the combine ran under a 5-second 40. Like testing check. production check, traits check. Like just a lot of things that check the boxes for me with Derek Harmon. And I mean, really, that entire Oregon defensive line was fun. Jordan Birch is an underrated player as a defensive
that's the guy
end.
who's really under the radar because he's a good football player.
He is, and he'll go somewhere in the top 60. I mean, because teams like him.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, I think he doesn't get enough national love. And then Jamari Caldwell, the other defensive tackle, who he's a great story in this draft. I've heard of JUCO guys and I've heard of walk-ons. He's the rare walk-on at JUCO guy. So he was a 3 technique at Houston, goes to Oregon. He's more of a 1 technique, and so I think you feel like you're getting an interchangeable player who can help give you depth at both spots.
Well, let me ask you this, talking about Harmon, because I went back and I looked at a lot of Michigan State tape, and I kind of liked his Michigan. Not that he didn't play good at Oregon, but I liked his Michigan State tape, or maybe just the way he was being used at Michigan State. That it's like, damn, that's what really got me to go with him.
Yeah. Well, and I think so. He got put on my radar in the summer because a scout texted me and said, "Hey, did you see how much Oregon gave Derek Harmon to transfer there, like NIL money?" And I hadn't seen a figure, and he told me, and it was 7 figures. And so I was like, okay, if Oregon obviously loves this guy, even though like he wasn't like a player people were talking about, Oregon obviously saw something in this player. So I made sure and watched him really closely that summer and then in September. And I mean, he looked like a player worth that type of money with the way that he was playing on the Michigan State tape. And then what he did that first month at Oregon. And I think, there were some questions about body type, like he had to lose. So he had some bad weight on him, had to get that off, which I think he did. He was down to 310 pounds, which was good to see.
Wasn't there, I had read, because you go really in depth with these guys, that when he was coming out of high school, this guy was like 375, 380.
That was part of the problem. Yeah, that was part of the issue. He was overweight. He didn't know how to condition his body. It wasn't a lazy issue. It was more of, hey, I'm bigger than everybody, and that's good enough for me because that's what's worked. He didn't know how to work. And so I think when he realized like, hey, football is kind of going to be my gateway to, a better life, he started to really put it together. It got better at Michigan State. And then it got even better when he got to Oregon. And so if we're going to nitpick him, it's, just making sure he stays conditioned, that body stays under control, all that. But as long as it does, I think this is an impact player.
Oh, no question about him. I really like him.
I got a question here that I know you and Greg are probably going to talk about at length. Tim asked, the combine measurements are done by the same person who has been trained to do it correctly. With recent rumors about them being done incorrectly, do we trust the pro day measurements? Of course, the Will Campbell debate rages on. You guys can talk about that one.
Well, and I'd love to hear Greg talk about this too, because he has so much more experience than I do in the league, and I've never, like, it's funny when you talk to teams about this and scouts, and they'll tell you, first of all, they acknowledge the problem. Like there's one national scout who did all the measurements at the combine. I'm not going to say his name, not going to put it out there like that, but he thinks that he did it right. Meanwhile, there's a lot more people around the league that think he did it wrong, because pro days I looked at the data. It's a 46 offensive linemen who remeasured at the pro day. I saw
that tweet you put out.
Yeah, 43 were longer at the pro day. And it's not like schools are doing the pro day and there's home cooking or anything like that. It's
right.
NFL scouts are doing, and different NFL scouts, not the same scouts, different NFL scouts. So who's wrong? The one or the, hundreds of NFL scouts are doing these measurements around pro day to pro day, workout to workout. Obviously something was off at the combine, and it is in most years, some teams look at it differently. Some teams are going to take are just going to rely strictly on combine because it's more of a uniform player to player. Other teams are going to take the best measurement, whether that's Senior Bowl, pro day, combine. One scout even told me if we like the player, we're going to take the better measurement. If we don't like the player, we're going to take.
I like him. I time him faster.
Exactly. So that's just how it works, right? But this is a unique year for that, where I don't want to make it sound like I'm making excuses for a guy like Will Campbell, because I'm going to be making the same excuse for, most of the offensive linemen in this class who were longer at the pro day, and that's the number I'm going to use.
Well, the entire time I went with Leak, we always went with the combine measurement. Now, in saying that, I don't know who did it this year. For most of my time in Chicago, and even after, Mark Sadowski did it. And Mark's with the Steelers now. He no longer does it. But Mark is by degree a engineer. And Mark, had worked for us. And he built this box type thing to use for the hand measurement to make sure it's exact and they really stretch their hand out. And he was doing the same stuff with the arm. The most screwed up measurement we have in our business is the arm length. And it's, part of it's easy. You go to the tip of the middle finger. It's where you start here. And that's what causes the discrepancy. But say with a guy like Campbell, we got 3 measurements. We got last spring, which was 32 7/8. You got 33 this spring, and you got 32 5/8 from the combine. So even if you take an average, he's 32 3/4.
Yeah.
But there's some, I can go back to when Decker was coming out of the Detroit's tackle. His spring, now a lot of times it's just a combine scout who does the spring measurements. So his spring measurement from Ohio State was like 32.5. And I had done him, and I really liked him. And I was talking to Howie, and I said, Howie, I really like this guy. He goes, no, you can have him. He's got short arms. I go, what's his arm length? He was 32.5. I said, looks longer. Well, he goes to the combine, and he was like 33 3/4. So it happens all the time with that. I used to, I had my scouting assistant. We'd sit in a couple weeks before the draft, right before we started our meetings, and what we were going to put on the card. So the official thing, and you get to the arm length, and you'd have a bowl game length, a pro day length, a spring length, and they were never the same. There's always, but everything else was equal.
Right. Yeah. And that's, so what, how do we make this more uniform? I feel like it's 2025. There should be a way to make sure we're getting
unless
accurate
you laser it somehow.
Right.
It's still, you got to start at the right spot, which is right at the center of the AC joint, and get that right. But still the thing with Campbell, and I agree Campbell's a good football player, but length scares me to be a tackle. And a perfect example is that look at the wingspan.
The wingspan, yeah, that's a problem.
His wingspan,
that's
you
tough.
want the wingspan to be longer than the guy is tall. His wingspan is shorter than his height. Now you can take Membu. Membu's like 6'4", so he's shorter, and his wingspan's like 6 or 7 inches longer. Okay, you could use Jalen Walker, who's only 6'1", and his wingspan is like 3 inches longer than Campbell. So to me, that says, okay, he's got narrow shoulders. Not only does he have short arms, but he's got narrow shoulders. So, hey, it's going to be up to the team. Whoever drafts him is going to try him at left tackle. If it doesn't work, they'll move him inside.
I think that, no matter what, they feel like they're getting a good player. It's just,
there's no question.
Takes a little bit of projection and hope that he can stick at left tackle, but if he can't, you're still going to get someone that's going to be one of your starting 5.
Yeah, I won't argue that. I just think he's a guard myself, but that's
I totally get it.
I'm old school, and I believe in length.
Yeah.
Dane, Mike Ibsen is wondering who is the first cornerback off the board. Seems like the buzz around Will Johnson is dying down a bit.
Well, I'm guessing we'll take Travis Hunter on offense. Obviously Travis Hunter will be one of the first 2 or 3 players off the board. I like him as a corner myself, a corner who can also play receiver, but there's a good chance that the Browns at number 2 draft him as a receiver to play corner. If it's not, then I still think it's going to be Will Johnson. I reported earlier today how he had his workout for NFL teams this morning. and his workout was good. The positional workout is very smooth. The ball reactions were strong. The way he moved kind of matched up on tape, which is strong. No 40-yard dash, which no surprise. I mean, I've been saying this since the fall. He's never going to run a 40-yard dash again in his life. This was going back to recruiting. His 40-yard dashes were being talked about as an issue. So he just doesn't have that top end speed that necessarily you want. Now, corner is a stopwatch position. So no 40 will be an issue for some teams, maybe not as much for others. Some others are going to just focus on the tape. But I understand that I totally get why it'll be a problem for some of those other teams. But you think about the 49ers at 11, there's several teams in there, the Bucks. There's a lot of teams that will potentially look at Will Johnson. But if he gets to the 20s, I don't think it would be very surprising at all. And, Travis Hunter might be the only corner drafted in the top 20 this year. It's at least a possibility. So I still say it's going to be Will Johnson, maybe Jedi Barron. I'm not as high on Jedi Barron as others. I like him, certainly like him. I'd love to have him on my team. I just see him as more of a nickel than a true inside-outside versatile guy myself. But I understand why, if you believe in that versatility, you're going to like him maybe a little bit higher than I do. So I still think Will Johnson will be that first corner outside of Travis Hunter drafted, but by no means do I feel like that's cemented in place.
No, I agree with it because I know what some teams are going to do. Why didn't he run?
Yeah.
But the same thing, Genty didn't run. Warren didn't run. Warren did nothing.
Yeah.
And his agent is a very good friend of mine at Sports Stars and know him really well. And he just said, "You're old school." And he said, the tape speaks for itself. He told me, he said, one team gave him a hard time. So he just said to him, then don't draft him.
Yeah. All right. That's it. Well, and I think with Johnson, it's the medicals are going to play a factor too. The fact that he was banged up last year with multiple injuries, and then some scouts got on him for maybe nursing those injuries and not fighting to get back, maybe making a business decision, and just worries about him those injuries lingering. And so,
and then there's hamstring issues, which for a
exactly.
DB is always or a wide receiver. Those are always a red flag.
Right. So not just the 40, but some of those injury concerns are something that scouts have brought up with Will Johnson. So which is something to keep in mind if, it's the 21st pick and Will Johnson's still on the board.
Well, that's what I think the beauty of this whole draft is, or the fun of this draft, is that nobody knows what the hell's going to happen. You're going to see the first group that's going to go pretty much the way it should go. Might be a surprise as to who takes who, but the top group of guys are all going off at around a certain time. After that, I've said it jokingly on here, it's like 52 pickup.
Yeah.
Throw them up in the air, and however they land, that's the way they're going to go.
There you go.
Well, and especially when you factor in the quarterbacks, no one has any. After Cam Ward goes 1, it's anybody's guess. If we see some trades moving around, the Saints at 9 are a possibility with Derek Carr's 2025 in doubt. With the Browns or Giants trade up from the second round, how early would they look to get in the first? I mean, there's the quarterbacks. We're going to probably see 5 going to the top 50. But where and how early, I don't think anybody has a great feel for that.
And Cousins will play into this, but he won't play into it till after the draft. And I know that for a fact.
Right.
Because they don't want to get into a situation like last year where they go. So he's got veto power over a trade.
Yeah.
So he won't accept a trade until after he sees who they draft.
Dane, who's your favorite player in this draft, and do you have a diamond in the rough pick? Squeegee wants to know.
Diamond in the rough. How about a couple maybe like that are outside the top 100? Dylan Fairchild, the guard from Georgia. I see a lot of Wyatt. Is it? I mean, he should. I get Wyatt Teller vibes when I'm watching him.
Yep.
He just the violence that he plays with, the aggressiveness that he plays with. He is a lot of fun to watch. Baron Sorrell, the defensive end from Texas, is another one that I think doesn't get nearly enough loved as he should. Maybe a little bit down or further on. Is a great story. Also a really good player. He's long. He can run. Maybe some development time needed there. But if I'm looking for a guy in the 5th round, a corner, Kone would be one of those guys. And then my 2 highest graded non-combine guys this year, Cable Dew, the guard. Well, he played tackle, going to move inside to guard out of Kansas. I think he's one of those guys that just watching him play clearly should have been at the combine. And then Corey Black, the corner from Oklahoma State, who the tape is good, and then he ran really well at the Big 12 Pro Day, was in the 4.3s. The workout was really good. So I think both those guys would go somewhere in the 4th or 5th round.
So one of my sleepers is CJ West, who I think I've mentioned to you before.
Yeah.
I just love his tape. Now, does he have the measurables? No. He ran a lot better than I thought. I mean, his workout was really good. But he goes to the East-West and has a great week of practice, didn't play in the game. And his tape at Indiana was really good. I compare him to a player the Bears already have in Billings, that type of one technique that is a real powerful guy.
Yeah, this defensive tackle class is just crazy because, he probably won't go until – the 4th or 5th round, and a team's going to get a really good value with him at that point.
Oh, no question about it.
Dane, I'd love, in the last couple of minutes we have you here, I'd love for you to talk about the Beast. There's new features involved. It's bigger and better than ever. Greg and I have been talking for the first half hour about the Beast. Why don't you tell us what are the new features, and I'll put some images up on the screen as you talk.
Well, I can't thank you guys enough for the kind words, and all the feedback I've heard has been so great and so awesome. It's a year-round project, so a lot goes into it. I've always done it as a PDF because I'm so focused on the work. I don't have time to dress it up and do all that. But this year they put a lot of resources behind it. So if you want to print it out, there's a PDF option. If you just want to enjoy it on your phone or a tablet or a computer, whatever, we have an interactive site that is dedicated just to the Beast on The Athletic. You can sort by position. You can easily search for each player. There's a top 100. It's really easy to navigate, and you can, you click on a player and you get all the combine data, pro day data. There's over 2,600 players in this, and with testing, NFL verified testing information for each player. So there's a lot of nuggets in here. I promise you won't get anywhere else. So, if you like the draft, this is something I promise you will be a must-have resource. The best compliment that I can get is from, guys like Greg who have been in this business for a long time. I get texts from scouts that say, "Hey, I didn't know this about this player. That's pretty cool." Or, on draft weekend when they're showing the war rooms and you see the Beast just sitting there on one of the tables for a team. Like that to me, that's the best compliment I could give, because I treat my job like a scout, put all the work in as much as I possibly can. And really proud of the end product that comes out and is known affectionately as the Beast.
I love the interactive that they did this year, but here's the key question: how long will that be available like that? Like ongoing, or
should live forever? Yeah,
okay. Yes.
I mean that's the amount of positive attention that this thing has gotten. It's one of the best things we do at the company, and so. I think this will definitely live on forever.
Yeah,
that part's terrific because it just makes it so much easier to get to one player.
Yeah,
right.
Oracle is just like me. I keep my Athletic subscription for this draft guide, and I love a lot of the other features and writers at the Athletic, but it's the draft guide that makes this such a valuable purchase for any football fan. No matter what level of interest you have in the draft, this is a valuable guide and one that you can keep for years on end. I love going back to previous guides that Dane has put out and research players who the Bears might be considering considering bringing in for a workout or what have you. There's tons of great information. And Dane, just this weekend, I was reading the bio on Ashton Genty, and I love Ashton Genty, but I love him even more now based on the information that you shared about his family, his upbringing, and so forth. And that's part of what scouts do. Is this? I learned this from Greg. Dig in for all that information, find out what type of person he is and the player is, and so forth. And you do a remarkable job, Dane.
No, I can't thank you enough. That's it, and that's exactly why I do it. I try to add context. And we're not going to see all the players exactly the same in terms of the on field, and that's okay. If we all saw them the same, this wouldn't be any fun to talk about. But it's all the context that's involved with the testing information, the background information. Some quotes I include for players from NFL scouts and execs, that type of thing. Try to make it a one-stop shop for everything draft. And like you said, if you're a casual fan or a diehard, there's something in here for everybody.
Indeed. Any final questions, Greg, for Dane before we get him back to his regularly scheduled programming?
Okay, who you got? I'll do what the fans are asking.
Yeah, there you go.
Who the Bears going to take at 10? I go,
right.
I don't know. I personally think that they would prefer to trade down. That's my own feeling.
Yeah, I mean, if Tyler Warren's off the board, Ashton Genty's off the board, Will Campbell's off the board, you would hope between those three guys, and let's say Armand Membu, let's say those four, I think you're hoping one of those guys would be there. I love the idea of Membu there at 10 because it's not maybe an immediate need, but I don't know that they're going to give Braxton Jones a big contract after this season. You have a guy that can step in as a 6 offensive lineman from day one, help you out at guard, help you out at tackle, and give you a long-term succession plan at left tackle. I don't think they've given up on the Yale kid by any means.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Right. But at the same time,
he missed all of camp. But when you take an offensive lineman out of camp,
especially a Yale, smaller
and
school,
FCS level kid who misses camp, his rookie year is shot. He didn't even practice until after the second game. So, and then he's put into a game, and practices once the season starts, there's no contact. You're doing game prep, so you put him in as like, whoa! Everything he sees, he's seeing for the first time.
That's it. And he's a great kid. So I don't think it's, he's not a train wreck behind the scenes by any means. At least, I mean, it'd be news to me.
I think he's going to surprise some people. But that's my for the Bears this year.
He was in my top 100 last year, so I loved him. I was a big fan, and so I think some Bears fans are probably down on him based off of when he was put out there, but he wasn't ready. I mean, he should not have seen the field last year, regardless. So yeah, I think that his best football is ahead of him.
But there's one thing about, and I love Membu, love him. And had they not signed Jackson, that would have been the guy I want.
Right.
But now, and here's my question, and this is just on everything he's done from the right side. Yep. When I saw him, I thought, my God, this guy's going to be a great guard. But he's got marginal length for tackle. He's got enough height for tackle. He's got great feet. So you're going to say, okay, we're going to put him at left tackle to beat out Braxton Jones, but he's never played on the left side. And so to me, that is now he has played some snaps on the left side in the, when they go into an uneven or an unbalanced formation.
Right.
But that's never a pass. It's always a run. And so, I just think it's a question mark to say I'm going to take him at 10 and say he's going to be a left tackle.
Sure. No, and I think that's it's not that he can't play left tackle. It's more that he's unproven. So I think we have to start.
No,
there.
I agree with that.
Right. And so, but the fact that Joe Tooney's in his last year of his deal, right? And then Jonah Jackson played 4 games last year. So, you like the upgrades they made at guard, but you could argue that depth at guard is still very important for this team. And so Membu being him missing the Senior Bowl is tough because that's where we could have seen him at left tackle, at guard, and see him move. And, I think this is where this is why you pay your offensive line coach, right? Is to be able to see him. You work him out on the left side, left tackle stance. Obviously, there's a big difference between in-game reps and just practice reps. But, you would hope your offensive line coach would get a good idea if hey, it looks really foreign to him or it looks like he could do it. He has the athleticism to do it. It's just a matter of muscle memory. And so I think you're absolutely right. It is a projection to say he's going to be the long-term left tackle, but I think you feel good about saying he's not a right tackle only. Like you feel like, whether it's moving inside to guard or eventually over to left tackle, there's at least potential to do that I think you can feel good about, maybe not great about, but feel good about. And I think that's what teams are telling themselves.
No, I can't argue that. And I wouldn't argue that, but to me, it's just saying, when you say we can put him at left tackle and to me, you can't. That
sums up this draft, right? Like that's this draft in a nutshell. Is after you get past those first 5 guys, each one of these guys has question marks or something about them that takes a little bit of leap of faith, or it's just going to give the debate in the room is going to be something that maybe creates some indecision. But I think that just sums up this group, this class we have.
And Thuney's supposed to be getting an extension. The trade was made with the thought of
yes.
Yeah, well, his agent's a good friend of mine too. So and what happened, I'll tell you the story, was that, right away when the trade was made, people like Rappaport said, well, expect an extension right away. Well, what happened is that when Poles was talking to Veach about the trade, he's telling Veach, yeah, we'll probably extend him. And it was Veach who tells the inside guys, yeah, they're going to extend him. But now, have they talked about it since? I don't know. But I know up until the day he was introduced and did a presser, Poles had never brought up with his agent an extension. But it was talked about with Veach, so I expect it'll probably happen sooner rather than later.
That makes sense, yeah.
Dane, the beast is out, and I want to know about the 7-round mock that's dropping this week. What can you tell us about it over at The Athletic?
Yeah, I just kind of pieced it together over the weekend, and it'll come out on Wednesday. It's a very Big Ten heavy mock for the Bears. That'll be my tease for it. They're in 7 picks. They have a chance to get better, especially with 3 picks in the top 41. I think with this running back group and, some of the potential on defense, like there's a lot of ways this team can get better. And I think this is just one of those scenarios. So fans can look for that on Wednesday.
Sensational, Dane. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Very generous with your time.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you, guys.
Take care.
See you later. Thanks again.
That is Dane Brugler over at The Athletic. He was very generous with his time, gave us 30. I apologize for all the questions and comments that I couldn't get to, but we've got Greg with us.
Yeah, we got a few more minutes. I'll do what I can.
Indeed. By the way, I have to ask you this before we get back to the topic of football. Yesterday, the Masters. Wow. Were you entertained?
Yeah, I got to be honest. First of all, I love the Masters.
I know you
and
do.
I watch every minute, Thursday, Friday. I got, you could have the featured groups on. You can watch it from 8 in the morning on the featured groups, and so I had that. That was on Paramount Plus. I was watching that. So yesterday afternoon, I get through 9 holes, and my granddaughter was confirmed on Thursday. And so we gave her a choice, take her out to dinner either Friday or Sunday, and she chose Sunday. So
ouch.
We're out to dinner, and I'm like on my phone. I have not seen the back 9. And when I saw that, Rory exploded on the 13th, he gets a double bogey on 13, which is an easy par 5. I didn't even know what happened to him. So, how he got he had to hit it in the water, to get a double bogey.
Yeah, it was thrilling. My wife and I were watching together because we both love to watch the majors together. And it was just great drama. It looked like he had choked, and then he comes back, and then it looks like he chokes again, and then he comes back. It was great theater, sports theater. All right.
His wife he met here in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but she's from Rochester, which is right next to Buffalo.
Uh-huh.
and he's become real good friends with Josh Allen. And but
Oh, wow.
what happened, she was working for the tour, and somehow he missed his ride over to, they were at what's the course, over in the west suburbs. There was the PGA was there, and
Cog Hill.
No, not Cog Hill, but he was missing his ride, and he was going to be late, and she took care of it and got a police escort and got his ass over to the club right on time. And that's how they met.
Unbelievable. She's by the way, and I told my wife also the story of he was engaged to a tennis star and that didn't work out. So she stopped rooting for him for about 2 minutes. All right. A couple of questions here I want to get to. OKC Bear Boy wants to know if you have any thoughts on the very sad Lacey situation, which is he's referring to Kyron Lacey, who died by suicide after leading the police on a chase. He was a 2025 NFL draft prospect. And have you heard about it? And do you have any thoughts?
I heard about it yesterday morning. He was involved in a car accident where somebody died, and there was a criminally negligent homicide, and he left the scene of the accident. And so, chances are he was not going to get drafted because, it wasn't like he was heavily involved, like he was driving the car, so it wasn't like a Carter situation.
Right.
And so he wasn't going to get drafted. And, I think, everything this kid has been preparing for the last 3-4 years or whatever, I think just grabbed his mind, and that's the power of what can happen to you when you get all consumed like that. It's just a horrible situation. And the same thing with the wide receiver from Texas. He's caught up in a situation.
Isaiah Bond.
And another guy that probably going to end up, unless he can get something straightened out now in the next week and a half, that's going to cost him a lot of money.
Yeah. So sad. We wish them all the best, and all the families involved as well. Levante wants to know, Greg, are you under the belief that I being Levante, and although he's speaking for me here too, that the Bears would do best if they add depth to the offensive line in the second round?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, if they took Membu, I'm not going to complain. Because like I said, had they not had Jackson, that would have been the guy I would have wanted at 10. Like I said with Dane, you can't sell me on the fact you can't. I know he might be able to play left tackle. You can't sell me on the fact that he can play left tackle. Because nobody knows the answer to that. Now, could they have done a private workout with him and did a lot of extensive stuff? Sure. Are we going to find out about it? Nope. Not until after they draft him. And, if they draft him. So I think if Genty's there, they take him. I think if Warren's there, they take him. After that, I don't have a freaking clue. And that's why I keep saying that it makes sense to trade down, because they don't have a fourth. There's more needs than they have picks in the solid rounds, especially not having the fourth. And so, people say, well, why in this draft, why would people trade up? Well, they trade up for an individual player. There's a player they really want, and they think someone in between where they are and who's ever picking, that guy's going to go. So they move up in front of them. And it's like, when Baltimore did that back the year they traded up to take the quarterback because everybody thought we were going to take the quarterback, and they wanted to get in front of us. So,
Right.
That stuff happens. I think, and my experience with this kind of draft is that there's not less trades, there's more. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to have trades in the top 5, top 6, but you get after about 8, and I think that's when the trading starts.
Okay. You've identified 6 blue chip players in this draft: Genty, Ward, Warren, Carter, Graham, and Hunter. So outside of the quarterbacks, I believe that it would be great if the Chicago Bears could acquire one of those blue chip players. Are you in agreement with me, and we've talked about this before, that the Bears really could use a blue chip player, a future all-star, all-pro, potential Hall of Famer, and that could be of more value than adding depth via this draft?
Oh yeah, I've said that. If one of those 6 guys is there, I believe they will take it. I think the only ones they got a shot at would be Genty, and I think that's minimal. And the better chance is Warren. And that, talking to his agent, he says that's minimal. But, he's also his agent, so he's going to be thinking higher. But I won't talk to him again about it until maybe Tuesday next week or Monday. And the agent a lot of times has a good feel. So now one thing, speaking about agents, who was it? There was a player, I can't think of the player now, who went to the rechecks were like last Thursday. And right away, Rosenhaus came out and said, yeah, our guy checked out great. He's good to go. And I just started laughing. I go, of course he did.
He's not gonna.
Do you remember who I'm talking about?
I don't. I think you told me, but I don't remember who the player
it was just like last Thursday when they had the rechecks down in Indy. But
and Jay Sanders, talking about blue chip players, has an interesting follow up. Who is now considered a blue chip player? Because in my mind, there's no one that is a blue chip player right now. Now, Caleb could be. Jalen
Caleb
Johnson
was considered a blue last year.
Coming into draft, but he didn't play like a blue in his rookie season.
No,
Fair to say?
He's a rookie. I mean, go back to like what Dane said at the beginning. Too many people put too much emphasis on the rookie year when you got to let it play out.
Absolutely.
Circumstances enter into Amagaji, perfect example. Circumstances enter into how he plays in that rookie year. So now you got different coach, different system. He's seen everything, but now he's got to see it through different eyes because he's going to be working within a different system. So I think there was probably a lot more blues last year. I don't have the list of last year's. Rome was considered a blue. But this year, I mean, the consensus now, I think Dane would say Campbell is a blue. The way he's got Warren as number 8, and he's got Will Johnson and Campbell, I think. And then when I got the thing right here, let me just click.
And as you're finding that, Jay Sanders says, I thought blue chip meant like an all pro or pro bowler. And that's my point, on the, Caleb.
Well, potential, but that doesn't mean as a rookie. Okay. He's got Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Genty number 3, Graham number 4, Jalen Walker number 5, Campbell 6, Membu 7, Warren 8. So it's pretty much the same. Except, wait, who else doesn't have in that? No, that's it. It's put Warren in there, and it's pretty much, the same group of guys.
If Okay, because a lot of people are picking on me regarding the Caleb blue chip. If Caleb is a blue chip player, then what is Jaden Daniels? A gold chip player? Because he was a blue chip. Caleb was a blue chip prospect.
They're both blue. They're both blues coming out of college.
Right. But after season 1, do you still say that Caleb is a blue chip player? He didn't play like a blue chip player.
Why not? Well, no, you look at the numbers. Again, you got circumstances about it, but you look at the numbers. Numbers are pretty good. Only had what 5 interceptions, 6 interceptions.
Yes.
That's a great number for a quarterback. But you got to take into the consideration when you say you're drafting a blue, you're not drafting a blue for a rookie year. You're drafting a blue for his career.
Fair enough. Okay.
So, you're saying this guy is going to be a top football player in his career. It's going to be, a probable Pro Bowl type player.
Mm-hmm. Tyson Bajan fan in the chat, and he's anyway. That's a fascinating discussion. We've got a flurry of comments in the chat. People discussing that topic that we will address in the future here on GTF. Let's get to some other questions. J2K had said this was a question for Brugler, but I'll ask it of you. Mason Graham is a Bears fan favorite, but there's concerns about his ceiling given his lack of length and size. Is he the number 1 defensive tackle in this draft? Because Dane talked about Derek Harmon, and I've heard a lot of people saying that Harmon really could be the number 1 DT.
Yeah,
and Kenneth Grant
he's got Graham as number 4,
right,
and he's got Harmon as
interesting
for a 12, 16.
And so who's his number 1 defensive tackle? Dane Brugler's.
Graham.
Okay. All right. So the answer to your question, then J2K, is he still has Graham as his number 1.
Right. And his tape is outstanding. Now, people say he only weighed 290 something, but he played heavier than that.
Yeah, Aaron Donald weighed 290, right?
Yeah, Aaron Donald was 6'1", and probably 285 to 290. And Mason Graham, you can't take away what he did. I think that what helped him some a little bit is he's playing against a guy who's a pretty damn good player too, in Grant.
Yes, indeed.
But he still did it himself. He is a hardworking guy. Got a great motor. Literal snap to whistle type player. I don't expect him to be there. So what difference does it make? If he's there, they're going to take him.
Jeff has a long question here. He says, Bears reportedly had a top 30 visit with wide receivers Trey Harris and Kyle Williams. The one is an X and the other is more of a slot. If Harris becomes a Bear, do we see Rome a lot more in the slot, especially considering Ben Johnson's comments about the slot receiver finding the ball in his offense? So the ball finds the slot receiver in this offense.
Yeah, it's an interesting, I would see, well, he's going to interchange his receivers. It sounds like, depending on the play or whatever. Right now, if you're looking at the group they have now, Rome would be your X, DJ would be your Z, and one of those 2 guys they signed as free agents would be your slot. Now, you could, let's say they took Harris in the 2nd round. Harris could be your Z and DJ could be your slot when you're going to use 3 of it. Now, here's the interesting thing. Let's say they draft Warren.
Right.
Warren, my belief is that Warren can do so many things that there's going to be times when he's going to be lined up as a 2nd tight end, flexed out or whatever, or he's going to be split out as your X.
Okay.
And, is he as fast as guys want as an X? No. But he's so much bigger. His hands are so good. He's a Swiss Army knife. There's a lot of things this guy does. And it's just, he's so unique. And people say, well, he's not Bowers. Well, he's a different kind of player than Bowers.
Right.
It's you're trying to compare apples to oranges on that one. So that, could I be wrong on that? Absolutely. But I think if they end up with him, you're going to see him be playing wide receiver and as a move tight end.
A lot of people are saying, I just don't see the value for Tyler Warren at 10. I am of the same opinion.
If he's a blue player and he's one of the 6 best players in the draft, why wouldn't you take him?
Right. Yeah, I argue whether he belongs on that blue chip list.
Well, Dan had him at 8, so you're still that's higher than 10.
Absolutely. I hear you. All right. I got a question here from J2K, and he wrote this while you guys being you and Dane Brugler, were talking about switching sides, the Membo situation. And J2K wrote, I'm not sure why some say a guy can or can't switch sides on the offensive line. There's nothing on tape that says one way or another. It's purely up to the player. You agree with that?
It's theory, it says, oh, yeah, if he can play on the right, he can play on the left. You're doing everything the exact opposite. Okay, and it's easier to go from, like, for a college player to be a predominantly left side player to go to the right. It's easier to play on the right, unless he's left-handed, but, play with a right-handed stance, etc. But now you got to play with a left-handed stance. And when you play with a left-handed stance, your left hand is on the ground. Everything is the opposite of what it was
right
on the other side. So it's a lot of it is getting used to doing it.
Right.
He doesn't have ideal length at 33 and a half. He's not height wise. He's fine. He's just a tad over 6'4". You'd prefer a little bit longer. He could use, say, a shorter tackle who's done really good job at left tackle is Deion Dawkins for Buffalo. Deion Dawkins is 6'0", okay? But Deion Dawkins has got 35-inch plus arms, like 35 and an 1/8 inch arms. So it makes up for that lack of ideal height. They list him as 6'5", but you go back to the combine, he was 6'0", 3'7".
Is the analogy of batting, like a switch hitter batter, you bat left-handed, bat right-handed. Some guys can't do that. You have a right-handed batter cannot bat from the left-hand side, and some can. Is that a good analogy for moving from right to left?
I don't know, because I'm a right-handed hitter when I could hit. I couldn't hit from the left side at all.
So is it fair to say that some players can't play in football, can't play on the left side of the line?
What it is that if you've been on the right side, I'll try to simplify this.
Okay.
If you've played on the right side your whole career, as Membu has, just the movement is second nature to him. Okay. Coming out of a stance, the footwork, everything. So now you go to the other side. Now you got to reverse that. Instead of your right foot back, your left foot's back. Instead of your right hand in the ground, your left hand's in the ground. So now, and so your steps become different. And it just it's really a matter of it becoming second nature. Okay. Now, when I was in New York, we took some linemen and we'd always, as rookies, if we wanted to get them on the field, we played them at guard for a year to get confidence. And then moved them out.
Gotcha.
And it worked. That worked for us then. Different time. Sometimes, again, because of salary cap and everything else, can you do that?
Just put a button on this. Is there anything on tape that can give you a clue whether an offensive lineman can play the opposite side that he's played in football? Anything that you could see on tape?
Well, okay. Part of it is movement. Okay, so you're looking at his movement skills,
okay,
and you know what the movement skills the player's going to need to play in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so brings up the answer to a question that one of our listeners asked last week, and it was about Carson Vincent, the tackle from Alabama State.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had not done anything and said I would. And he plays left tackle at Alabama State. And he's good against that level of competition. Okay, but he's not really challenged. I mean, this is a big man. But when you look at his movement skills and when you see him out in space, number one, I don't think he's an ideal fit for this scheme because you've got to play in space so much.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think he can play left tackle in the NFL, period. I think he's a right tackle. But it's easier to go to the right side than it is to go to the left side. So, but still, you got to make that switch and you got to practice doing it. I guess there's some guys that could be pretty easy. And part of the answer is, what have they done in college?
All right.
Right. So you got to go back to that. Now, in the case of Membu has played downs on the left side, but it's been, as we were talking with Dane, only when they go to an unbalanced line, and it's always a running down. So they have 4 offensive linemen on the left side of the formation, and sometimes they do 4 on the right side, and the left tackle comes over on the right. So they've done that, and you've seen him come out of a 3-point stance on a rundown, and he's been fine. But you never see him in pass pro.
Interesting.
I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm not saying. I'm just saying you can't say he can do it.
Right.
There's some guessing there.
Absolutely. Okay. Fascinating discussion. We could talk about it more at length and probably will in future shows. We'll see what happens down the line. Let's get a couple more out of the way, and then we'll call it a day. Arnie Lindbergh just asked, would Grant at 10 be a reach in your opinion if no one to trade down with? So, of course, we got to set the context for Greg. So let's say the blue chippers are out of the way. Does Grant appeal to you at 10, the defensive tackle out of Michigan?
I think he'd be in the conversation.
Yeah.
Again, I don't like the word reach in when you put it into this draft, because it's reach according to who? Because as we've said 1,000 times, and you look at everybody saying everybody's grades are different on these guys. So Grant could very well be the 10th rated guy on the Bears board or something like that. Could be the 22nd rated guy on another board, and he could be the 12th or 13th on another board. But as compared to who now in the grouping of players that are with him, if you've got somebody better, you're going to take it. Let's say Harmon. So let's say there's Harmon and Grant. Well, now it becomes a decision that the Bears have already made. That's part of these discussions that goes on in the meetings last week and this week, is that if you get into a situation like that, who would you rather have? Okay, here we are, we're picking, and we got a choice between Harmon and Grant. Who are we taking? And they're going to make that decision.
Right.
And both of them fit that need of having another anchor guy, on the defensive line. But to me, so does Walter Nolan, even though he's not the big physically anchor, but he is so freaking strong the way he plays. And he's got a little bit more to him as far as pass rush and mobility. So it's like, okay, do you turn him down? But, and part of it then is, well, he's got some issues. Well, what are the issues? And years ago, I knew all these issues. But, a lot of that stuff's private, and you got to just do the best you can to find out.
Yeah. And it's become even more private nowadays. Is that safe to say in this era?
On a lot of the medical stuff, it is.
Interesting.
Because of the HIPAA laws.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I doing a guy for next year for one of the agents, and he missed a bunch of games at the end of the year last year. So I Google Joe Schmo's injury. Oh, he had a lower body injury. Okay, but I don't know what it is because they're not telling you. They don't have to tell you.
That's right. That's right. And if you knew somebody over at the school, you might be able to get it out of them. And then again, that person could say, hey, I really can't tell you. I'll get in trouble.
Well, see, here's what happens now. When I first started doing this, it was like this way for years and years and years. When you make a school call, part of the day is you go see the trainer. And you sit down with the trainer and he gives you the background on the players as far as injury and everything else. Guess what? You're not allowed to even go see the trainer anymore.
Oh, wow.
Okay. The trainer sends his information to the league. The league sends it to the teams. Okay. And then you have it. And so I think, later on you can, during the off season. So in between the season and the draft, you could probably call the guy to get some answers, but it's not your scout's not finding it out during the course of the fall football season. So, something was, you might not even know what the injury was unless you can dig it up, by Googling it.
Interesting.
He was out for 4 weeks. What was the injury? I don't know. They won't tell me, So, you could guess if you were at the game, or you could find out, well, it looked like he had a knee. And in all honesty, I've done tape and for guys for next year, and I see him, one guy I was doing, and he missed some games, and so you go to the last play he played, right? And then you say, okay, what happened to him here? Well, one guy looked like he did a knee, like he hyperextended his knee.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know that exactly.
Right. Dr. Chow on the Sports Doc on social media. Yeah, he's good at speculating of the injury. Okay. I got one final question for you, Greg, because it'll lead up to kind of a tease to Wednesday's show that I'm doing with Danny Shimon. The big board, right? So the Chicago Bears are preparing their big board. On that big board, they're not going to have any quarterbacks, right?
Well, I can't say that. I don't know how he's got it. I can go how my board was.
Yes.
No, there wouldn't be any quarterbacks.
Okay.
And we're not going to take one.
All right. So you would only have players that you are considering drafting and you're prioritizing the order.
We would call it our hot list.
Okay.
And that front board had the hot list.
Okay.
And it was set up by tier and by position. So I didn't have player 1, player 2, player 3, player 4 like that. So across the board, say you had the quarterbacks over here, then the running backs, then the wide receivers. So they were in tiers, level A, level B, level C. And, there was like a line separating the levels. Well, you couldn't take a level B player in the first 2 rounds. You only could take a level A player. And then you had them lined up on the board according to how you graded them priority. So this is, the first guy, the second guy, the third guy. But that gave us the ability to really look at, look not only at value, but look at position. Because, especially, and if you have like 6 guys with a 6-7 grade, the guy you prioritize more maybe just a touch higher on that board than another guy with a 6-7 grade. But you tried to separate it that way. But when I was in New York, when I started out with New York, the draft was 12 rounds, and there's 28 teams. So we had 12 columns of 28. And that's like the first thing we got rid of when I came here. Because that was like, why do I want names that I'm not interested in?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
And the same thing I posted, it's like, if a player's not a fit, so he's not a scheme fit. So you could get like in Lovey's scheme, if he got a 6'3", 360-pound defensive tackle, we weren't taking him. He could not play in this scheme. You give him his grade, and you give him his accurate grade. It might be a 6'6" or a 6'7". You're just not taking him because he can't play in the scheme.
I see.
So he's on the sideboard with the grade that he is due, but you're not going to take him. So anybody we have off the board. The scouts know who those players are. And like come out of the combine, we had within a week of coming out of the combine, we'd have a medical meeting, and we'd flush guys out there, and we'd tell the scouts, take this guy off your list. He's a medical. Because the main reason being is I don't want them wasting their time doing work on a player that we're not going to take.
Yeah, right. There's only so many hours in a day.
Right.
Indeed.
So don't waste your time. This guy, don't worry, he's done.
The reason I asked for that tutorial is because I've asked Danny to present his own big board, 25 players that he has put in order that would be good prospects in his mind for the Chicago Bears. And so that's what we're going to talk about on Wednesday. And so I'll ask you next Monday, days before the NFL draft, do you want to do like a top 5 at a couple of positions?
Yeah, we can do that. Might change it up a little bit. I'm doing it.
Sure.
By the way, I'm going to do the Willis show on Friday for a little while anyway.
Yes.
They asked me if either last Friday or this Friday, and I couldn't do it last Friday, so I said I would do it this Friday.
That's right. You're on with Swifty every other Friday.
We are on with Swifty. In fact, like you and I will do day 2 at like 10, and then I'll do with Swifty at 12.
Excellent. Very popular guy, man. Swifty was doing his own mock draft over the weekend. Sensational show, Swifty. And I think that's it, Greg. Anything else you want to talk about before we pull the plug?
Any news since we've been flapping our jaws all day?
Not a thing. And Jeff says, thanks, Greg. Looking forward to this show on Friday. That's Friday at 7 p.m. Central. And the best way to stay on top of stuff is to subscribe to the channel.
Central? I know one time I did, and it was around 6 or 6:30.
Yeah. And they could potentially move it up for you if it's at
it doesn't matter. Just that just so I know. That's all.
Very good. All right, that is it for Greg Gabriel. I'm Aldo Gandia. Please subscribe to the channel so you can stay on top of everything that we're doing. We'll see you all very soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.